IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. A little special edition, a late edition of Buy, Sell, Hold. I just want to begin by number one, thanking everyone for your patience. And I can't tell you how moved I am and my wife is, Angela is, by all the love and compassion so many of you have shown. Members of the beat have reached out, parents of players have reached out, and a lot of you have reached out, offering your support and prayers and for what we're going through with our dog Rita. I'm going to begin with just an update there because I've had a lot of people ask about it, and then we'll dive right into the show. For those of you who care, here's the latest of what's going on. And we went to the vet this morning expecting to hear bad news and thought this might be our last day with Rita. And so we went to the vet and we got the news we expected, which was her levels continued to go down and the medicine hadn't really started working yet. And the numbers were getting low, a lot lower than last time. And so we talked to the vet about what our next step should be. And to our surprise, our vet recommended her to get a blood transfusion. He said that there were some numbers that actually encouraged him in regard to her body was still trying to produce blood, but the white blood cells were just killing the red blood cells too fast, that he felt a blood transfusion would give her time to allow the medicine to hopefully do their trick. So we went to the local emergency vet to get the blood transfusion, and they were out of canine blood. So we had to make the decision to drive to Purdue and do it there, which is where we took Rita from, those you remember, 2 years ago. And we made the decision to have Angela take Rita, and then I would stay behind because obviously not only am I way behind in work, but it's been a really tough couple days for Sadie as well, going back and forth to and from the vet. And obviously we Rita's staying downstairs and we have to kind of stay with her all night. So like the house is just completely turned around and it's been kind of rough on Sadie. And she just had surgery, as you guys remember, like a month ago that we thought we might, we were concerned about that. And so we made the decision that I would stay behind and do a show and get caught up on work and take care of Sadie, and Angela would take Rita down there. So they just got down to Purdue. Angela texted me about 20 minutes ago. She's now checking in, and the transfusion is probably going to happen sometime during the show. And, obviously been praying all day that she'll pull through it. And if she does, that's obviously amazing in God's will. And if she doesn't, then we're going to look back and just remember the great times we had together with her, and that'll be God's will as well. So, but either way, and Salty, yes, that's what she has. IHMA is what she has. So, but again, I love the work that I do. I love covering Notre Dame football. I love talking Notre Dame football. I love breaking down film. We're revamping our coverage this season. There's a lot of things I love, but I got to tell you, I was not anticipating. I was hopeful, but not anticipating that we would build the kind of community that we have. And I truly, I've shed a lot of tears the last few days. I'm not afraid to admit that about Rita and just preparing for potentially losing her. But I've also shed some tears and joy of how amazing this community is and the love you show for each other when other people have asked for prayers, and the love that you guys have shown me and my family whenever we've been going through tough times. It's I hope you all know how much you're appreciated. And I know sometimes I can be grumpy in chats and things like that, but that's about football, and it's the passion about the game. But I love this community, and you guys and gals are truly amazing. And I can't express how much it truly, truly has meant to Angela and I. How much you guys have stepped up and really just offered support. People have upgraded to gold clubs, which, it's like, again, it means a lot. It means a lot. Somebody who I care deeply for, who went through him and his family, their own tragedy, stepped up and did something like that. And I'm not asking for that, right? We're doing okay. We can take care of that, but it just, the meaning behind it, it touched me in ways that I was not anticipating. And so it's honestly why I'm here tonight doing this show, because of how, not that I owe you guys, but I kind of felt like I owe you guys and gals because of how amazing you've been. And it is a blessing in ways that I never dreamed when I started doing this. When I really launched Irish Breakdown a few years ago, I never dreamed it would turn into this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to spend some time with my Notre Dame family tonight, and we're going to have some fun doing a buy, sell, hold. It's going to help me get my mind off the procedure Reed is going through, and we're going to have some fun with it. So I appreciate you all very much, and I'm ready to rock and roll because there were some really, really good submissions for the show tonight. All right, so we're going to get rocking and rolling here with the buy sell holds that were presented, but I also had a couple super chats, as you guys remember, in the buy sell hold segment. These are submissions that are presented by board members, boards.irishbreakdown.com, by our Champions Lounge members. They're the only ones that can submit buy sell hold, or unless you want to do a super chat, we do have a couple of those, so we'll have those, and then also any other super chats you guys bring up, we'll pull up too. So I'm going to start with the super chats. And got a couple here, but I wanted to first one, Lil Bep with a super chat. Thank you very, very much. What's up, IB Nation? My first chat on the lives, but I've been watching daily since summer 2023 and joined the board shortly thereafter. Best decision you'll make. Go Irish, beat them Aggies. Agree with all of that. Absolutely. You can find that. If you're watching live, you can see it at the bottom, boards.irishbreakdown.com. So appreciate you very, very much for the super chat and for your support of IB Nation. Be fast. Buy, sell, hold. Thank you for the super chat. Be fast. Buy, sell, hold. Both. Oh, yeah, I think it was BP Hast is what it was. I remember now. Sorry about that. BP Hast, buy, sell, hold. Both starting tackles to open the 2025 season will be different than the ones who open the 2024 season. That is going to be a fascinating question. And we had a few submissions about the offensive line, including another super chat about the offensive line. And here's what makes it interesting. When I look at the offensive line, it's really kind of it's kind of fascinating because, like, we thought that there would certain things are going to happen, and I want to hold off my overall picture of the offensive line for some other super chats and other submissions. But for this one, it's going to be fascinating to see kind of how this season goes, to see how this question gets answered, or this submission gets answered for next year. As far as the buy, sell, hold, I'm gonna buy it, because there's just so much uncertainty and so much depth, but I don't feel great about it because we just haven't seen it. So, like, how right now, first of all, there's a lot of, this is the starting offensive line. What we saw yesterday on August 15th, guys, that may be the starting offensive line. It's not the starting offensive line today because that hasn't been established. Notre Dame is working several players in at left guard. They're working several players in at left tackle. It is, however, looking likely, or not likely, there's a very good chance that Anthony Knapp could end up being that guy for a host of reasons. He has had a very strong camp. A couple things I've learned about him that I'm going to put on the message board here later tonight. I actually put some of it. I think I might have put some up on the board yesterday, but it's been fascinating. And what's really fascinating is he was not recruited to play tackle. He was a left tackle in high school. He was recruited to play inside. That was what we were told, and that's what he was told. He could, play all over, but that's what we were told. So the fact that he's starting at left tackle is kind of a shock, to be honest with you. And not because the thought that, I didn't think he was any good. I had doubts about Anthony Knapp's size. I still do, to be completely honest with you. Others were higher on him. Others were lower on him. I was kind of right in the middle. I gave him a 4.5 upside grade, but not as high of a normal grade because I had questions about the size. And when you see him out on the practice field, he looks significantly smaller than anybody else that they have. Even Joe Otting looks thicker than he does. But what I was told yesterday was but he's holding up very well. But he's very athletic. That's not a shock. We always knew that. His length is very good. And from what I was told yesterday, the one thing that I'll share here is he's been the most consistent guy at left tackle. That says a lot about him, but it also says a lot about the other guys at tackle, that a freshman is your most consistent player. If he performs well this year, and if Emil Wagner performs well, what do you do? Do you throw Charles Jagasol back out there next year and say, okay, Charles is back to playing tackle, and then you move Anthony Knapp back inside where you initially recruited him to play? Do you move Charles Jagasol inside to guard where, look, with Charles Jagasol, I don't care to get into the tackle versus guard debate. Here's the reality. I think Charles Jagasol can be an elite player wherever you play him outside of maybe center. You want to put him at left tackle, put him at left tackle. You put him at right tackle, put him at right tackle. I don't care. He's going to be, I think, if he is healthy, a dude at either spot. You want to put him at guard? Put him at guard. I think he can be an All-American at guard too. That's one of the great things I love about Charles Jagasol. Do you move him inside and give you a power guard there? Do you move Billy, or Anthony Knapp inside? Do you do you let there be a three-man battle or a four-man battle next year with Charles Jagasol and Gerby Lambert and say, hey, yeah, you started last year, but you're not guaranteed to start next year? It's fascinating. And so, I mean, I'm buying it for now just because things change, right? Someone's going to get hurt. Somebody may not play well. Something's going to happen, right? In this regard, it's going to say they're going to have to do some shuffling around. Could it happen? Certainly. But man, I tell you, it's been very interesting to see how this whole thing has played out. It really is. And there's still a lot left to go here before we find out who the starting tackle is going to be. And the other thing is, you said to open the 24 season. To your point, just because certain guys may open the season in 2024 doesn't mean they're going to finish the season, which then, of course, leads into 2025. So it's going to be a very interesting period. Got a super chat from my guy, Ryan Michael. Thank you very much, Ryan. For Rita, keep fighting, girl. Wishing you all the best. Go, Rita. Go, Irish. Appreciate that very much, man. I'm actually taking a screenshot of that right now, and I'm sending that to Ange because she's sitting there right now waiting on them to take her back so she can have that, man. I really appreciate that very much, very much. Yeah, man, that means a lot. I appreciate you for that. Got a super chat here from AST12321, also an offensive line one. Buy, sell, hold. The uncertainty at O-line is now becoming a very, very serious threat to derail the season objectives. I'm going to sell that. And I'll be honest with you, I have had this emotion. I have had opposite emotions, and I've had every emotion in between when it comes to the starting offensive line. But let me posit a bit of because honestly, I don't know what Anthony Knapp potentially starting left tackle means for Notre Dame, right? Like there's a lot of things I don't know. We have seen 290-pound tackles at Notre Dame be very good. Zach Martin never got beyond 295 at Notre Dame. I know he was listed higher. Maybe his fifth year he got up to that point in time, but his redshirt freshman year in 2010 when he was pretty good, he was 290 pounds. Robert Hainsey struggled to get above 290, 295 during his career. He was very good. Anthony Knapp right now is very similarly built to Robert Hainsey. He's a true freshman. He's a little more athletic and actually stronger than Robert was as a freshman, even from what we've seen, but also from what I've heard. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But let me posit this sort of, because I'll admit, I don't know what this means, but let me posit a scenario for you. One of the concerns that a lot of us, you in the chat, myself, had about the offensive line was we don't know what Tosh Baker can be at left tackle. I thought he could be a solid right tackle. We saw him play good football in the bowl game. Could he go to the left side and thrive there? Nobody could know for certain. We were hopeful. Don't know for certain. He certainly wasn't going to be as good as Charles Jagasol. And that left a lot of people with concerns. What's going on right now is not so much a situation where Tosh is playing poorly and he's terrible, or he's injured. He's not injured in that he's out because he's at practice. He was practicing yesterday. This is a scenario, from what I can tell, where right now he's getting beat out. So if Tosh Baker was a concern for you, the fact that somebody is beating him out should actually raise the level of optimism about this line. If let's just say Sam Pendleton starts. And one thing I said to you guys after was the first time we saw Sam Pendleton playing guard, which was I think about a week ago. He looks way better at guard than he did center. Way better. He looks comfortable. He's quick. He's back to coming off the ball with good pad level. He's not have to think about snapping, and he's physical. If he beats out 2 returning starters for the starting left guard job, does that raise concerns about experience? Heck yes. But does it mean that the floor has been, or the ceiling has been raised? Yeah, it does, because it means he beat out 2 guys that started all of last year. That means who they had at left guard last year got outplayed by a redshirt freshman. So it means that the talent is taking over. That's a good sign. The young talent taking over is a good sign from a potential standpoint. Now, does it leave concerns about how are they going to be in the opener? Yeah, it does a little bit, but I was kind of concerned about how that was going to be anyway. And so we're going to have to find out how this goes. Am I concerned about the fact that you've got 3 guys starting on your offensive line, if this is how it goes? Again, I don't think that's necessarily how it goes, that are redshirt freshmen or redshirt sophomores or a true freshman. Yeah, that concerns me a little bit from an experience standpoint. But then also, are these guys going to be able to hold up games 13, 14, 15, and 16? That's a legitimate question. So all things that we're going to have to find out and get answered. But I just look at it like this and say, I don't think that this is about uncertainty as much as they are. Look, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm going to jump around a little bit tonight. My head's in a couple different places. This just kind of popped in, right? What did we say before the season started? As long as there are legit battles on the offensive line, I'm confident that they're going to be good up front. Why? Because if they let the talent win out, then they're going to be better than they were a year ago, where we didn't feel that they necessarily let the talent win out. If Sam Pendleton starts at guard, there's nobody injured at guard. If Anthony Knapp starts at tackle, yes, you lost Charles Jagasaw, but he beat out the potential replacement for Charles Jagasaw if it turns out that way. That's a good sign. That means guys earned positions. If Rocco Spindler is starting at left guard against A&M, it means he battled Coogan and had to hold off Sam Pendleton for that role. Because in order to win that job, right now, there's fierce competition being allowed now. And they're letting guys win those jobs. I don't think that's ever bad, especially if you're someone who believes what I believe, which is that this team is really, really talented. And the young talent on the team is even better. They're allowing the young talent to legitimately go out there and push for jobs. Gerby Lambert's getting all the number 2 snaps at right tackle, which means if Emil Wagner doesn't play well, he could be in trouble. It's not great to be young on the offensive line. But if you're going to have a weakness, I'd rather your weakness be you're too young than you lack talent. And it's the same thing we said. If you can figure out a way to get through that opener with a W, I don't care if it's 10-9, 3-2, right? 7-. What was the score that Iowa had a couple years ago? Didn't they beat somebody like 7-3 and they didn't score an offensive touchdown and like 2 safeties and a field goal? They beat, I think South Dakota State is who they beat. I don't care if that's how they win. Win that first game, and then you got 3 get-right games before Louisville comes to town. And so that's the thing. Let the talent compete and let the best players play. And if that's what they're doing on the offensive line, it may not work out, but I can live with that because it's telling me that, hey, look, we're not going to get into this whole seniority thing that we lived with in the past under the previous administration where veterans are always going to get more of the benefit of the doubt. We complained all last year about how veterans are held to a higher standard than young players. Well, right now, it's not looking like that. Right now, it's looking like, hey, we're going to let it battle, and if a young guy wins a job, then the young guy's going to play. Guys, that's never a bad thing. Never a bad thing. It's not ideal to be that young, but here's the deal. Your anticipated starting left tackle going into the season had only 1 more career start and only about 60 more career snaps than Anthony Knapp had. So you were already going to be an inexperienced left tackle. As long as they're letting the most talented player win that job, I have no problem with that. No problem with that at all. Had a couple more super chats pop up. Lil Bep again. Thank you very much for Rita. Appreciate you. IB Nation is here for you and your family, Brian. I got to tell you again, man, how much that means to me. I really appreciate y'all very much. This community is amazing. It really, really is. I don't know if I express emotions very well. I tend to be a very matter of fact kind of guy. I hope you all are getting a sense of how appreciative I am. And if I'm not showing it enough, I apologize. It's not really my personality, but it is it's more appreciated than you guys realize. It means a lot. John Banco with a super chat. Thank you, John, very much. Buy so hold. Notre Dame has a defensive score versus A&M. You know what? I'm gonna buy that because I want to be in a good mood tonight. And I'll say this, this is a defense that focuses a lot of attention on forcing turnovers and a lot of emphasis in practice on forcing turnovers. Brian Smith had a post on the board the other day, and it was a really fascinating statistic that I thought was interesting because it's going to go one of two ways, right? The statistic that he's talking about, it's going to go one of two ways. And last year, Notre Dame finished second in all of college football in fumbles forced. They forced 18 fumbles last season. But when you look at where they ranked in fumbles recovered, they were tied for second there. They were tied for 44th in fumbles forced, right? So, fumbles recovered. So, and I think opponents looks like 24 total fumbles, opponent fumbles, and you recovered 8. What that tells me, if I'm looking at this, is that they count forced fumbles maybe a little bit different than a guy putting the ball on the ground. I'd have to look in that statistic, but I would imagine that would be the case. But the point is that when you look at Notre Dame last year, forced a lot of fumbles, didn't recover a lot of fumbles. Well, they're working on trying to get better at recovering and turning those things into big plays. I think this is going to be an even more aggressive defense than it was last year. You're going to have an inexperienced offensive line, a quarterback, and not great offensive line at Texas A&M, and they're going to go after that group. So in a lot of different ways, a quick pick six on, a force and fumble, something that's going to result in a score. I could see that happening. And it would certainly give Notre Dame a huge momentum boost. But the point that I was making about that statistic is one of two things is going to happen. If they force a lot of fumbles again, odds are pretty good that they're going to recover a lot more and hopefully be in some situations where they can take one back. Because I know Xavier Watts had one of those last year. Or they just force less fumbles and the recovery rate stays about the same, but they force less fumbles. Hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, I'm going to buy that. I could see that. I hope that's maybe that's like a hopeful buy as opposed to a prediction, because I have no idea if they're going to score a defensive touchdown. But I like where your head's at, John, and I'm going to buy that because I think that's the kind of big momentum changer that they need. I've said this before. There's a few things that change momentum in a football game more than anything else. Blocked punts, especially those for scores. Kick returns or punt returns for touchdowns and defensive touchdowns are, to me, the biggest momentum changers in all of football. And if you can get one on the road, it's huge. If you guys remember when Notre Dame played Michigan State in 2017, if you remember kind of how that game went and just how one of the things that really allowed Notre Dame to jump all over them in that game was Notre Dame takes that first drive, they go down, they score a touchdown. Brandon Wimbush on a quarterback draw runs it in for touchdown. Michigan State's driving right down the field. They get near midfield, and Brian Lewerke tries to throw a slant route. Julian Love baits him and picks it off and takes it back to the house. Michigan State was playing catch up the rest of the game, and just obviously they couldn't hold up. Notre Dame was also able to force a fumble in that game. That right at the goal line that Sean Crawford forced, and I believe he also recovered in the end zone, forced a fumble of LJ Scott, and they recovered, and then they go 80 yards down, and all of a sudden, instead of it being a 21-14 game, it's a 21-7 game, and the game's over. That was a very good Michigan State team. That was a team that won 10 games and finished in the top 25, and you had 2 turnovers like that completely changed the dynamic of that game. They're huge. And another example is if you remember the Alabama-Clemson game, in the 2018 title game. One of the big parts of that game was early on, AJ Terrell setting the tone that like, hey, we're coming at you and getting that pick 6. And, what if Alabama takes their Alabama's next drive? So Alabama started with the ball. Tua throws a pick 6. Then Bama gets the ball back and they go down and score, make it, tied up 7-7. But Bama was playing from behind at that point in time because they got that early score. And then eventually Clemson's offense heated up and they ended up blowing them out in that game. But those are big momentum changers in football games, especially when you're playing good teams and especially when you're on the road. So I'm gonna buy that. Josh Phillips with a super chat. Thank you, Josh. Buy so whole. James Rendell will cause at least 2 fumbles on special teams due to his ability to spin the ball on punts. Well, that's an interesting one. I'm gonna sell that just because. Well, you know what? Let's stay in a good mood. Let's stay in this opportunistic good mood. I'm gonna buy that because I think it's possible. I would feel. Here's what I don't know. In my first thought on this is how do you? Oh, somebody else brought this up. The Notre Dame Clemson game in 2020. It's another one, the forced fumble by Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah, that he took it out of the hands of Travis Etienne and took it back for house. Those are big momentum changers. The blocked punt early against Clemson that went back for a touchdown really sparked in that game. So I could give you a ton of examples. Those things are huge. So let me get back to this one on James Rendell. What I don't know, because I didn't return. I returned punts like once or twice in high school. And I never was a returner outside of that. But I don't know if it's easier to catch balls in daylight or at night. My thought would be it's a little harder, especially with really good hang time, to field punts at night because the ball can kind of go up. It's like fly balls at night, right? Like the ball can go up and it goes above the where the lights are, or it can get high like that, and then it changes colors and comes back down. It can really mess with you, where in the day it kind of just stays one color. Does that make it easier or harder? I don't know. My thought is that it would be harder at night. Well, Notre Dame's not going to have as many night games this year like they did last year, so maybe it doesn't impact it as much. Yeah. So I'm not sure, but I'm going to buy it just because I'm optimistic. But I would be curious to know which one is harder for them to do. That would be very interesting. Ant VR says it's harder at night. If could be. I would think so, Ant, right, Anthony? I would think it's harder, but I guess I can't speak from experience, and we didn't play a lot of night games. When I was coaching, we didn't play a ton of night games. So it's very, very interesting to see kind of how that plays out. And then are you facing the sun? Are you not? There's all types of things. So I'm gonna take your optimistic route. We're gonna go ahead and buy that sucker. And say that, and it kind of goes with the first one, right? Like the forcing turnovers, and that'd be huge. Force a fumble, return it, get some points. I'd love it. Be a great way to give the offense a boost in a game like that at Texas A&M. All right, now it's time to get to the submitted questions from our Irish Breakdown subscribers over at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We got 3 from OND15. Number 1, buy, so hold. Riley Leonard design quarterback run game will be a significant part of the game plan at Texas A&M. I'm buying that. And number 1 is, I was at a speaking engagement last night, and somebody was talking about the concern about Riley Leonard and, are you going to want to run him and stuff? And my answer was, if you don't want to get him hurt, my answer to him was, and it was a very good question, because he also brought up the mentality part, which we talked about last week, which is a concern. I'm more concerned about that than I am them running him and being afraid of him getting hurt, because you can't coach not to get somebody hurt. Because if you're coaching not to get somebody hurt, unless there's a present injury. So if you have a player that has a present injury, then obviously there's going to be some concerns about, okay, we need to protect that specific injury, so you may not do this, right? So when Riley Leonard got hurt last year, you didn't see Duke running, using him on design runs against Florida State. He only had 1 scramble that game. He went for 10 yards, but he didn't run as much. But that was a present injury. This is a past injury that has since been operated on and fixed and healed, right? So at the end of the day, you got to coach the game to win. And you don't bring a guy like Riley Leonard in, go on the road against what is a top 25 team in front of 100,000+ people, and say, we're not going to utilize one of the best assets he has, which is one of the absolute best trait, he's one of the best at it in college football. you're going to need that. Just generally speaking, you're going to need that, and it will be part of what they do. Here's another part of it why it's an easy buy for me is because you're going to need that to beat A&M, in my opinion. One of the best things you can do to protect two first-time starting offensive tackles is do things that forces the edge of the defensive line to not be as aggressive. And if they're going to come screaming off the edge, I'm going to have quarterback power calls, I'm going to have quarterback draw calls, and I'm going to have read zone calls that are absolutely going to be utilized on the side of Nick Scourton, where he wants to come flying off the edge. He'll make a couple plays, but if he's going to come flying off the edge thinking he's going to get to the quarterback every time, we're going to do some things to take advantage of that, with the hope being that if we have enough success and hit some big plays, maybe that slows him down a little bit and he doesn't come as hard the next few times. And then now we've got some ability to throw the football. So you're going to best way to attack that is obviously run at it. You know, you can use your 12 personnel and do some different things, but the quarterback run game, especially the read zone stuff and the power read stuff where you're ISOing the defensive end and forcing him to kind of have a dual read is stuff that can be very effective at protecting or I shouldn't say protecting your tackles, but helping your tackles. Because when let's say you run 6 total quarterback designed calls in a game, that's 6 plays where your offensive tackles don't have to block a defensive end. I mean, that's the matchup we're worried about, right? So if they don't have to block them on those plays, that's a good thing. Then there's going to be a lot of other plays where you're chipping with a tight end, chipping with the back. So you're now limiting the amount of times that your tackles, especially if you have a true freshman at left tackle, that they have to go against those really talented Texas A&M edge players. The more times you can do that, the better chances you're giving them at having success. If Anthony Knapp has to beat those edge players 60 times in a game compared to, let's say, 40 times in a game, because you've got the read zones, you've got some bootlegs where you're not really worried about him, or you're having a tight end help out, or you're doing this, that's going to increase the number of opportunities opportunities he has to win and decrease the number of opportunities you have to beat him. And you're helping him in that regard. So I think those things are smart and why you should go for it. Next one, Riley Leonard rushes for over 70.5 yards against Texas A&M. I'm going to say that I'm going to go under on that. I think they will certainly utilize the run game. I have a feeling that Texas A&M is going to be very keyed in on Riley Leonard, which if I'm Notre Dame's offense, I'm kind of okay with that because I'm still going to call some runs and things like that. But if they're really keyed in on Riley Leonard, then you have less opportunity to focus on Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price. I think they're going to be doing things to kind of crash the edge, hit Riley, do those type of things, which if you're running a read zone, yeah, okay, they may be able to blow it up. But if I'm just running inside zone and, you're coming at me and I'm giving the ball to Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, it's never a bad thing to give the ball to Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, like ever. It's never a bad thing unless it's the wrong read, right? That's the only – and even then they still might be able to make some plays. So I could see him going for 60, 65 at the most. And being impactful because those runs matter, especially if he's able to get some early. And then all of a sudden that opens up some opportunities for your other guys to hit some big plays. I could certainly see that. If he runs for over that, I don't think that's a bad sign. It just means he's making plays. But I have a feeling he's going to go slightly under, if not a decent amount under, because of the focus on him is going to allow some other players to get going. Final one from O&D 15. Design quarterback runs will not be a significant part of 9 to 12 of Notre Dame's games this year. I'm going to sell that because I get where you're coming from, meaning there's going to be a lot of games you don't need to use him in the quarterback design runs, and that's spot on. Like when you have a quarterback like that, you don't need him to run that way to beat Northern Illinois. You don't need him to do that to beat Navy or, teams like that. And your point is you're going to need him to do that against A&M Florida State and let's say USC if you find them, or Louisville, depending on who you think your third best team is. I would throw in not only those three, but I would throw in Louisville in that conversation. When I release my top 25 next week, Louisville will be in my preseason top 25. I think you're gonna want to have that available to beat Georgia Tech. And there's going to be a couple other games where you're going to take quarterback design runs into every game. There's going to be a lot of games where you don't utilize them unless you need them. There's going to be another game or two outside of those where it's going to be kind of like, okay, they're coming at you a little bit, or there maybe a defense is having a tough go of it early or they're crashing the edge of the running backs, and you're like, okay, this is what we got to do to use it, and where maybe in the past we wouldn't have done it as much. But I think it's going to be less than 9. I think 6, 7. I'd be a lot more in favor of that. I'm going to sell 9 out of 12, but I think the spirit of where the question comes from, I'm on board. There's definitely going to be some games this year where it will not be a significant part of the offense. Good stuff. Christopher Crosby, buy, sell, hold. Mike Norvell has done some really good things while at Florida State. Buy, sell, hold. It wouldn't have turned out as good if he was at Florida instead. I think that program needs reset from the top all the way down. I buy that. I do. I buy that. I think Florida has a very unhealthy view of itself. They think that they are a blue blood. They think they're Bama. They think they're this great program that everybody just has to respect, and they're because of how good they are. And I've pointed this out before. Florida has been good under 2 coaches, and that's it. Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. That is it. This program thought. I mean, look at what they did with Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen comes there, has success. First year there, I think he takes him to the Orange Bowl. I'm pulling up his career. Peach Bowl first year. They finished 7th in the AP. Next, they go 10-3. The next season, let me stay on that 2018 season. You go 10-3 that year. You lose to Kentucky, lose to Georgia, lose to Missouri, but you beat Florida State, blew out Florida State, beat number 5 LSU, beat number 23 Mississippi State on the road. When in a bowl game, you play number 8 Michigan in the Peach Bowl, and they blast them 41-15. His second year at Florida, they go 11-2 and finish number 6 in the rankings. They lose to number 5 LSU. This is in the 2019 season. They only lost to LSU by 2 touchdowns, which is pretty close for most deep people. And they lost by a touchdown to Georgia. They blew out Florida State again. They beat Miami. They got revenge at Kentucky. They beat number 7 Auburn by 11. They beat Missouri on the road and then beat Virginia in the Orange Bowl. His third year is the COVID year. They go 8-4, but they finished ranked 13th in the polls that year. They go to the SEC title game that season, and they had a 3-point loss at number 21 Texas A&M. They had a 3-point loss to LSU. They had a 6-point loss in the SEC title game to Bama. They had a terrible bowl experience. They got blown out by Oklahoma. A lot of guys sat out that game, and for some reason, Florida fans and administrators didn't like that. He comes out the next season again after going 29-9 in 3 years. Lowest ranking was 13th. They fired him the next season because they were 5-6. Fired him. Now, was the 5-6 season a good one? No. They lost by 2 points to Bama, 7 points to Kentucky, 7 points at LSU. They got blown out by Georgia. They got blown out by South Carolina, and they lost in overtime at Missouri. Was that a good loss? No, it wasn't a good loss. That wasn't a very good Missouri team. But that gets that guy fired after what he did already and what he had done there when he was the OC as part of a title team, and that's how you treat him. That's what you do when you have a very unhealthy view of yourself. And there are so many problems with the boosters there, with the leadership there, and the athletic department, and also you're in a very tough conference that it would have been much tougher for him to get there. Mike Norvell's gotten tons of support from people at Florida State, tons of support. And he's done a great job there. He's also in the league he's in, he's always going to have the more talented team in all but maybe one, at times 2, depending on what Miami does, the most talented team on the field. Clemson's the only other one that consistently puts a team on the field that's as talented as they are. Nobody else does. At Florida, you're not always going to have the most talent. Even some of the best Florida teams in the past had to play teams that had comparable talent. That's rarely the case at Florida State when you're playing in the ACC. That helps as well. So that factors in too. So it's not just the notion that it's a dysfunctional institution from an athletic standpoint. It's also it's easier when you're at Florida State with what they stack up against compared to what Florida has to overcome in order for them to be successful. So yeah, I'm going to buy that for a host of reasons. It's a really good submission. Sean Ziegler with a buy so hold. Tyler Buckner, TB12, will have at least 2 passing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns this year. I'm going to sell that. I do not think Tyler will have 2 receiving touchdowns, nor do I think he'll have 2 passing. I don't think he'll have 2 of either. He is not a guy that's really in the mix right now at receiver. I think if they get into games and they're blowing people out, you're most likely going to see Micah Gilbert, Cam Williams, Logan Saldate, guys like that getting opportunities to catch the ball, the tight ends, not Tyler Buckner. Now, the 2 passing touchdowns I could see because I could see them some sort of fake field goal type situation where he does a shovel or does something to throw I could see that, but I don't think he's going to do both of those things. And I don't think he'll do 2. I'm just saying I could see it. But no, I don't think that's going to happen. Detro Hunter, buy so hold. The winner of the game between Oklahoma State and Utah will be in the Big 12 title conference game. Let me go back and just look real quick and see where that game is going to be played real fast. Give me a second. All right. Utah, Oklahoma State. So Utah, that game is going to be at Oklahoma State. Utah has to play at Houston, at Colorado, at UCF, Oklahoma State. So yeah, if Oklahoma State loses at home to Utah, they also have to play at Kansas State, at BYU, at Baylor, at TCU, at Colorado, and then they get West Virginia at home. If they lose that game, they're going to have a tough time being in the Big 12 title game. Conversely, Utah plays at Oklahoma State. They also play at Houston, at Colorado, at UCF, and then they have home games against Iowa State, BYU, TCU, and Arizona. So I will say this. I'm going to buy it because I buy Oklahoma State winning that game, and I have Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game. I'm going to sell it you know what? I'm going to buy it both ways. Now that I think I'm going to buy it both ways because I think Utah's schedule is manageable enough that if they go on the road and upset them in that game, they're going to have the best shot, a really good shot of playing in that game. They also play UCF on the road. So, yeah, I'm gonna buy that. I kind of talk myself through a little bit, but I'm going to buy that. The winner of that game will be in the Big 12 title game. I mean, look, I have Oklahoma State in there anyway. Vince has Utah in there anyway. So it's not like either of these teams are necessarily surprising. And honestly, Detroit Hunter, I could see a scenario where both of these teams get a rematch in the Big 12 title game. That's not out of the question either. That the losers also in the Big 12 title game, especially if the loser is Utah. If Oklahoma State's the loser, then I think they have no shot or a very little shot of being in the Big 12 title game. Utah should have a little bit more of a manageable shot because of their schedule. So I could see that. Tommy Guns, 44. The 2 Irish pass catchers that made the preseason Biletnikoff watch list, while being awesome themselves, will not be the 2 pass catchers that make the finalist list. Those 2 pass catchers will be TG1. I think that's meant to be JG1 and the Bo Show. Number 1, Notre Dame will not have 2 finalists for the Biletnikoff Award because think 3-4 guys. There's no way Notre Dame's going to put up the numbers where 2 guys are finalists. I will say this. If they have a finalist, I don't think that it'll be Mitchell Evans because I don't think he's going to get the same push and love that Brock Bowers got, nor do I think he'll be as productive as Brock Bowers was, especially 2 years ago. TG1, the great one. I get it now. Okay. My bad, Tommy. Thank you for clearing that up, USMA. So that's my bad. So that is TG1. You were right. I was wrong. I'll admit that. Doesn't happen often. I'll admit that. Me admitting it doesn't happen often. If they have a finalist, it could be Chris Mitchell, but I think there's a better chance that it'll be one of those two if they have a finalist. But I mean, honestly, I could see all three of those guys emerging as the guy in getting to that point in time. So yeah, if Notre Dame has a pass catcher that's over 1,000 yards this year, he's going to have a shot to be in that conversation, because it means Notre Dame's going to be really, really good. And I think they'll get a push. So yeah, I'll buy that one. It won't be two. I'm going to buy that it'll be one of those two. How about that? Lucky Duck 512. Buy, so hold. Riley Mills is the second defensive player drafted in the 2025 NFL draft. And I assume he means the second Notre Dame player to be drafted in that. So yeah, I'm going to buy that behind Benjamin Morrison. Yeah, I could buy that. I don't think it's a given by any stretch. I could see it being Howard Cross. I could see it being Xavier Watts. I know Ryan Roberts is watching, so I'm just going to say this to tweak him a little bit. I could see it being Jack Kaiser. I don't, Ryan. But I certainly, if Riley has the kind of year that I think he's going to have, I think he could end up being the number two. Because he's been on Bruce Feldman's freaks list the last 2 years for a reason. He's going to test really well. I've talked to people on the program. He's very strong. He's going to test out where they're well there too. So he'll have some good athletic, not elite athletic numbers, but now look at like where Braden Fisk was drafted last year. I could see Riley Mills having that kind of surge, not just from a production standpoint, but a draft standpoint. Could certainly see that. So yeah, I think he's certainly the second most talented. But yeah, as far as like if we're assuming Benjamin's the first, there, then sure. I think Riley Mills could be second. I'll buy that. Matter of fact, that would be my prediction that he'll be the second. Part of because of how my predictions for the kind of player he's going to be this year. Riley Mills, next one, Riley Mills is going to be drafted in the top 2 rounds. That I'm not quite sure about, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if I'm not a prognosticator that's going to be able to say, oh, for sure, him having this year puts him in round 2. I'm actually going to go look here real quick and see what Braden Fisk did last year and see where he was picked. He was picked in the second round, pick number 39. I'm not there yet with Riley Mills. I think he's got a lot of work he's going to have to do, a lot he's going to have to prove. I will say this, however, if Riley Mills has the kind of season that I think he can have, then I could see him as a layperson. I could see him kind of going up and having that kind of jump. What I'd be curious about is, and I'm not sure if Ryan's still in the chat, but if he is, maybe he can answer this question. But what was the draft prognostication for Braden Fisk going into last year, and how does it stack up to what the prognostication is this year for Riley Mills? Because Braden Fisk is not nearly as big as Riley Mills. He's 6'3.5", 292. Riley will be 6'5" plus and 295. He's going to have longer arms. But Braden Fisk had really good testing numbers, and I don't know that Riley's going to test that well. I don't know he's going to run a 4.78 and a 33.5-inch vert. I don't know he's going to do those things. I'm actually curious to see. I forget what Bruce Feldman put in his freaks list the last 2 years about Riley. I'm actually going to pull that up. I'm curious if he had his testing numbers from the last, his vertical numbers from last 2 years. So that's this last year's. Where is this year's freaks list? Let me see here if I have that. So there we go. So last year he said that Riley Mills he benched 450 pounds, did 225, 30 times, vertical jumped almost 33 inches. So that's a pretty good vertical jump. And then this year he said Riley, actually he said the same thing. No, that's last year's. Sorry. I'm looking at last year's for both of them. Let me find the list for last season. So let me find the 2023 freaks list and get that. Okay, so yeah, here's this year. So what he said about Riley this year is he vertical jumped 38.5 inches. Oh, no, that's Jalen Sneed. He vertical jumped 32 inches, broad jumped 9 feet. Compare that to Braden Fisk, who had a broad jump of 9 feet and 9 inches and vertical jumped 33 and a half. So he doesn't have the explosive numbers that Braden Fisk had. And I think that played into partly why Braden Fisk got drafted higher. But last year, Braden Fisk, from a production standpoint, had nine tackles for loss and 6 sacks. If Riley Mills can top that, then he might have a chance to jump into that conversation. I certainly think so. And I'm saying this is a lame. I'm not a draft expert. I've never claimed to be a draft expert, but I've seen guys taken in the second round that I don't think have the talent that Riley Mills has. Buy, sell, hold. Someone other than Riley Mills or Howard Cross leads the defense in tackles for loss this season. Oh, I could buy that. I'm going to sell that because I don't think that'll. I think I think Riley Mills is going to lead the team in tackles for loss. That's just kind of where I'm at. But I could certainly see a scenario where it's Drake Bowen. I could see a scenario where it's RJ Oben or Josh Burnham. I could see a scenario where it's Boubacar Traore. I could see a scenario where it's Jack Kaiser. I think I said Drake Bowen already. Jack Kaiser. I could see a scenario where it's Jalen Sneed. Certainly could see that. But I think it's going to be Riley Mills, and so that's my pick for who it's going to be. So I'm going to have to sell because of that. But it'll be interesting. It'll be close. Lucky Duck 512 also said, buy us a hold. Josh Burnham will lead the team in sacks. I'm going to sell that because I think the sack leader will either be Oben or Boubacar or Riley Mills. But I think Josh is going to be their best all-around defensive end. I think Josh's impact is going to go beyond the sacks. It'll be pressures, but also how he plays in the run game. RJ Oben will play more Viper than Big End this year. Sell that. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the emergence of Boubacar Traore and Jordan Patel is going to be at least solid enough to stay there. I think is going to keep that from happening. Boubacar Traore and Jordan Patel will combine for 9 sacks. Well, here's the thing about this. If this is true, then the second one definitely won't be true. And so that I could see that one. Boubacar Traore and Jordan Patel will combine for 9 plus sacks. I'm going to buy that. I mean, look, as disappointing as Jordan Patel was last season, he still finished the year with 4 sacks, and he had 4.5 sacks the year before. So I could certainly see an scenario where he gets 4 to 5 sacks, and then Boubacar matches that number. Yeah, I'm buying that one for sure. I feel actually pretty good about that one. Lucky Duck 512 has some more. Notre Dame has a better scoring margin than they did last year at plus 20.8. I like this one because it doesn't just look at they're going to average more points or less points. So what his submission is basically that Notre Dame could actually score fewer points, but if they're holding teams to even fewer points on that end, that they could, the margin be greater. Boy, that's a tough one. I'm going to sell that. And here's the, you know what, man, I'm torn on that one because part of me says that I think they may give up a couple more points just because I think there's going to be some games where the teams they play are going to score some more garbage points than last year. I think there's going to be some good offenses at the top of the board. There weren't great offenses on last year's schedule. Will the offense score? That's a tough one. I'm gonna. You know what? Let's be optimistic. I'll buy that one. I could see them matching last year's point totals and on offense, and then dropping 2-3 points on the other one. So I'll buy that. I don't feel great about that one because I could see a scenario where, like I said, guys, I've said before, they play a really good schedule this year. It's not as tough as some schedules from the past, but it's not as soft as people make it out to be. And I think it's a good offensive schedule too. I think A&M is going to have a challenging offense, challenging for Notre Dame. I believe that Northern Illinois got one of the better running backs Notre Dame's going to face. I think Purdue's going to be better on offense this year. You've got Hudson Card coming back. They've got some transfers coming in that I really like on offense. They're going to help them out. They're going to be better than they were last year. Louisville's going to be really good on offense again this year. I think better than they were last year because, you have some guys you're replacing, but you're returning a lot of guys that are going into year 2 of that system. And so even like last year, transfers had no help. There was no veterans that could help them. We talked about this in 2022 with Notre Dame when you had a lot of veterans like J.D. Bertrand, who's a senior, and Maris Leofau was a senior, but they were all in year one of that defense. And so it was kind of new to everybody. Well, last year, a lot of the newcomers, like Drake Bowen, had benefits as a freshman that Jalen Sneed didn't have. And the same is true for Preston Zinner and Jaden Alsbury, in that when Jalen Sneed was a freshman and his class, Josh Burnham and those guys were freshmen, they were learning the defense the same exact time as the veterans were. The veterans could help them to a degree, but the veterans didn't have the same mastery of the system, where when Drake Bowen showed up and JD Bertrand takes him under his wing, which he did. And so if Drake Bowen has a very good year, you have to give credit to Max Bulla. You have to obviously give credit to Drake Bowen, but JD Bertrand is going to deserve an assist for that too, because I've been told by multiple sources inside the program that would very much know this, that JD took Drake under his wing like day one last year, because JD had a mentality that's very similar to what we've heard about past offensive linemen. You know, Zach Martin and then Ronnie Stanley and Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey. There was a great pride in continue the tradition. If the Alex Bars is his way, if when we leave, it's up to us to make sure that the future of this position is in a good place, that they know the standard and we've taken them under a wing and they understand the expectations of this position. I was told that JD very much had that mentality at linebacker last year. Hey, my time is going to be over next year. I want to make sure that this talented young buck is in position to be as good as he can be next year. And when he replaces me, that's why he was a captain. And so I think he had that benefit in ways that other guys didn't. At Louisville last year, you had the same situation. You had a bunch of transfers coming in and freshmen coming in that had no mentors because they were all learning it together. This year, you're going to have those guys that can be mentors to the newcomers. And I think that's going to help a bunch. So I think this offense is going to be very good at Louisville. I think Florida State's going to have a good offense. Not elite, but it'll be pretty good. Georgia Tech's going to have a very good offense this year, especially if their offensive line holds up. I think they're going to be very good. And I think USC is going to, again, have a very good offense. I think Virginia's going to be better on offense this year than they were last year. So there's a lot to there's going to be some quality offenses. And I could see Notre Dame giving up 17 points a game and only scoring 39 or 40 again. And it's a great year and you dominate your opponents, but your margin's not quite as big. So I'll sell that. But so I'm going to sell that. I'm back and forth on that. I'm going to sell that one. I just talked myself into it. Sorry about that. Buy, sell, hold. First TD of the season is scored by Jeremiah Love. Buy that. I'd love to see him or Jadarian Price go on a long run to kick that game off. I'd love it. Notre Dame's buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame scores a touchdown on their opening drive. I'll take that one too. You know what? Let me think about. Actually, I want to look at something. So I know in 2022. Notre Dame took 2021, Notre Dame, Florida State. I am pretty sure that Notre Dame took their opening drive right down the field. And I believe that was Jack Kaiser Jack Kaiser threw a touchdown pass to Michael Mayer. I believe that was on the first drive of the game. Yes, Michael Mayer, 41-yard touchdown pass. He ran I think it was a 4th and 1. He ran like a little corner route. Florida State came down, play action, threw it over top, 41-yard touchdown pass, not touched. 2022, Notre Dame's against Ohio State. Notre Dame scored on their first drive of that game as well. They had a field goal. If you remember, they threw a little RPO play to Lorenzo Styles, and he made a guy miss the tackle. Lorenzo ran for over 50 yards. They got down in field goal range, and Notre Dame kicked the field goal on their opening drive. And then I'm pretty sure that last year against Navy, Notre Dame also scored on the first drive of the game as well. I'm looking at that now, play-by-play, touchdown on the first drive. So I'm actually going to go now look at the Notre Dame Duke game from 2020. I believe Notre Dame, I don't know that Notre Dame scored, but I remember them going down the field and getting a really good drive early. And Notre Dame went 3 and out actually in 2022 on their first drive against Duke. So you'd have to go back to 2020 to find the last time. I remember Ian Book throwing a pick early, but that was yeah. That's interesting. So 22, 21, 22, 23, the last 3 years, Notre Dame has scored on their opening drive, 2 times a touchdown, 1 time a field goal. So I'm going to stick with that, and they're going to take that down and score in the first drive. I dig it. By so hold, Riley Leonard runs in the first tee of the season. Oh, I see what you're doing here. You're making me pick one, 2 different ones. So no, I will sell that because I went with Jeremiah Love. I think it'll be one of the 2 running backs will score. Now, yeah, I'm going to sell that. I was going to try to talk my way into saying that you could turn that 2 different ways, but I'm going to stick with what you said. So I'm going to sell that because I think it'll be Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price. Floating Irish, buy so hold. If Riley Leonard goes down in a game and Notre Dame is behind, do you buy putting CJ Carr in the game because of the better arm, or sell instead of putting Angeli in, who has the in-game experience? Neither of those things should be the determiner. Neither of them. So I'm trying to think of how to respond to this. I sell that you're going to put CJ Carr in because he has the better arm, and I'm selling that you're going to put Steve Angeli in simply because he has in-game experience. Neither of those reasons should be why you put a quarterback in the game. It's who gives you the best chance to win the game. Steve Angeli will not give you the best chance to win simply because he started a meaningless bowl game. CJ Carr will not give you the best chance simply because he has the best arm talent in the roster, which he does. But if there's a scenario where one of those guys has to come in, it's who runs the offense the best. It could be the guy with the most experience. It could be the guy with the best arm. It could be neither of them. It could be you put the guy in the game that gives your offense the best chance to go down the field and score touchdowns. That's really who it comes down to. I would err on the side of putting the guy in with the better talent, but if that guy mentally doesn't know the offense and can't make checks and things like that, then you're not going to put him in the game. You're going to want to put the guy in the game who can run the offense. Simply having more in-game experience doesn't mean that you're better prepared to run the offense either. So I sell both of those reasons. You put the guy in the game who at that time gives your team the best chance to move the ball and score. Whether it's CJ Carr, Steve Angeli, or Kenny Minchey. Go with either one of those guys. So any of those guys. Who gives your offense the best chance to make that kind of move? Sorry about that. Angela is meeting with them now, and we had to just discuss a couple quick things to make sure we're on the same page. So I apologize about that, but she's keeping me in the loop on what's going on. Next one, JGY Town. Buy so hold. If Riley Leonard goes down actually, we just answered that one. Sorry. You know what? Why I didn't do that one? Because I didn't read your name to begin the last one. That's my bad. JGY Town, you had the last submission. So we're going to go on to the next one. We got Law Dog. Has 3 of them here from Law Dog. Thank you, Law Dog. Buy so hold. The defense will take the ball away 2+ times against A&M. I'll buy that. I think that's part of what you're going to need to do to win the game. Look, to go on the road against a top 20 football team, that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I've seen teams win games and not force turnovers on the road. It's not completely unheard of, but it certainly helps. It's certainly a great assist. And when you look at Texas A&M last year, they weren't a team that really turned the ball over a ton, but they had several games on the road where they certainly did that. 3 turnovers at Miami, two turnovers at Tennessee, 2 turnovers in the bowl game against Oklahoma State. So they certainly had some games. They had a neutral site game against Arkansas last year that they won, that they turned it over 3 times. I can promise you if they turn the ball over 3 times, well, I promise you, but they have a great shot at winning, Notre Dame does, if they can force 3 turnovers from Texas A&M. Great shot. So, yeah, I think I'm buying it because it's what they need to do. It's what they need to do. And obviously last year, Notre Dame was a much better team when it came to forcing turnovers than they were the year before. Now, here's the interesting thing. Notre Dame was much better at forcing turnovers later in the year. Remember, Notre Dame's defense was good early last year, but it wasn't really great consistently. It was just always good, but it was elite some weeks, good in the next, elite next, good the next. They didn't force a turnover against Navy. They forced 2 against Tennessee State, 3 against NC State, none against Central Michigan, none against Ohio State. Then they forced at least 1 turnover in each of the next 8 games and had 2 or more turnovers in 5 of those games, and then had back-to-back games where they forced 5 turnovers against USC and Pitt. So when they forced turnovers, it tended to come in bunches. So I'm going to buy that. And again, it's partly out of necessity as much as it's about predicting that it will definitely happen. They're going to need that to happen if they're going to want to win this football game. By so hold, the Notre Dame offensive line penalties will be 2 or less for the A&M game. I'm selling that one. I would love for that to be correct. Love for that to be correct. But I have a hard time on the road, 112,000 people, true freshman at left tackle if that happens, redshirt sophomore at right tackle that's never played a meaningful down. Your center and your right guard have only played 3 career snaps. They played a home game, a road game against one of the most apathetic fan bases in all of college football in Stanford. And then you played a bowl game against Oregon State. This is going to be a different environment even for those veterans. I mean, that game last year against Stanford was in front of 30,000 people. It's a little different environment on the road than playing at Kyle Field. So there's going to be a false start. There's going to be a snap infraction or a hold. I think there'll be more than 2. And you hope that they're not devastating penalties, but I think so. Riley Leonard, by so hold, Riley Leonard will throw 2 or more completions of over 35 yards against A&M. I'll buy that. I think that's going to be a big part of it. Yeah. I think that's going to be a big part of it. I am shocked, folks, shocked that Salty Virginia Peanuts has a question about Jaden Greathouse. Are you guys as shocked as I am? I totally didn't see this one coming. Totally shocked that my guy Salty has a Jaden Greathouse question. But we're going to go with it anyway. Buy, sell, hold. The great one finishes fall camp in the top 2 of players evaluated for punt returner, and we'll see game action as such regardless of whether or not he is the principal punt returner. Now, in the submission, and I didn't have room to put it all in here, he talked about how good he was as a punt returner in high school, and there was a clip involved, but kid had 4 punt returns for touchdowns as a senior in high school. He's a very dynamic punt returner. I don't know that he'll be the starter, but he'll definitely be in the top 2 in my opinion. And I think at some point in time, he will field a punt for some reason or the other. Maybe they think he gives them the best chance at fielding a punt. Maybe Faison's a little nicked up. There's going to be some reason why he'll see game action as a punt returner. I don't know that he'll be the starting punt returner, but your submission says he'll be in the top 2. I agree with Salty. He'll be in the top 2. I think at some point in time, he does field a punt, and his submission says, or not, whether or not he's the principal punt returner. He doesn't have to be the principal punt returner. Somebody said sell. He thinks it'll be Faison. The submission allows for Faison still be number 1, but that we will see him and be impressive. Salty just reminded me he had 4 touchdowns out of only 16 punt returns, which is a very, very impressive statistic. One thing Jaden Greathouse proved in high school and proved at Notre Dame last year, that young man knows how to get into the end zone. There's no doubt about that. Do it to it, buy, sell, hold. I should bet the mortgage on Riley Leonard pulling off the Joe Burrow parlay, Heisman winner, Natty, and number 1 overall pick. Selling the heck out of that because you should never bet your mortgage. I'm not a big gambling fan, period. I have played the occasional game of roulette at Atlantic City and in Las Vegas, but that's about it. I don't bet on sports. I don't know that I've ever laid down a bet on sports other than maybe like in college when I was with dorm mates, like I'll bet you, I used to eat Monster Burgers my freshman year. You guys remember those Monster Burgers from Hardee's? Bet you a Monster Burger maybe that Denver beats the Packers in the Super Bowl. That's the extent of my betting. So should never do that in my opinion. Just my personal opinion on that one. Never bet the mortgage on that. Even if you think Riley Leonard's going to pull that off, but if you're dead set that that's going to happen, then you God bless you on that one, buddy. But I don't see Riley Leonard having the same God-given ability that Joe Burrow had. He's very talented. I don't think he has the arm Joe Burrow had. I think Joe Burrow has more arm talent. Riley's a more dynamic athlete, more dynamic runner, but I also don't know that I see Riley Leonard emerging as the number 1 overall pick. I will say this, however, if Riley Leonard wins the Heisman and if Riley Leonard leads Notre Dame to a national championship, I don't think it would be out of our minds to say that he could eventually jump up to the number 1 pick. I mean, like, honestly, who had, going into last year, nobody was shocked that Caleb Williams developed into the number 1 pick. I personally wasn't shocked that Drake May rose up to be the number 3 pick. I wasn't shocked that Bo Nix played like a first-round pick. I wasn't shocked that Michael Penix played into the first round. I was shocked he was picked number 8. Who had Jaden Daniels emerging to be the number 2 overall draft pick on their bingo cards going into last year? I sure didn't. I thought he was going to be a good player, but I didn't see him becoming the number 2 overall pick. And if it wasn't for having a guy like Caleb Williams, he'd have been obviously number 1. So, certainly that could happen if the first 2 happened. No doubt. Who had Joe Burrow being the number 1 overall pick going into 2019? I don't know that many people had that on their bingo cards either. And I was someone who had them being a playoff team that year and still didn't go there. So, I don't feel great about that one, but I mean, stranger things have happened. Buy, sell, hold from P. Hamilton, 16. Notre Dame would finish 4th in the SEC this year. Replace Notre Dame with Florida in the SEC, use their schedule. Well, why do I have to use their schedule? No, I think if Notre Dame was in the SEC, they finish probably 3rd. That's where I have them in the preseason rankings. I think is 3rd or 4th. You give them that schedule. I mean, that's a tough schedule, but I think Notre Dame would finish in the top 3 in the SEC. Absolutely. I think this is a much better team, I think, than you think that they are, if you think that they would finish 4th. But, Notre Dame would finish 3rd in the Big Ten this year, replace Notre Dame with UCLA in the Big Ten. I disagree with that as well. I think again, let's say we give Notre Dame USC schedule. I'll play your game, right? Let's go, or UCLA schedule. Let's go to UCLA schedule this year. Okay. So I went to the Pac-12. So it still hasn't sunk into me that they're in the Big Ten. UCLA's in the Big Ten. I'm trying to find their schedule. So let's go with their schedule. So conference schedule for UCLA this year. They play Indiana at home, win. They play Oregon at home. I think Notre Dame would beat Oregon at home. I'm going to skip their next game. They play Minnesota at home. They play Rutgers on the road, win. They play Nebraska on the road. I think that's a win. They play Iowa at home. That's a win. They play at Washington. I think that's a win. And they play USC at home. I think that would be the win. The toughest game that they would have in conference, I shouldn't say it, Oregon's going to be the toughest game. The next toughest game would be UCLA plays Oregon at home and then at Penn State in back-to-back games. That would be tough. Like, I could see Notre Dame dropping one of those. But the rest of their schedule at home, I mean, in the conference, I think is very manageable, including at Washington, who I think is going to be a good team this year. But I think Notre Dame's a significantly better team than Washington. They get USC at home. So that would put Notre Dame, to me, potentially in the Big Ten title game. So, no, I don't think they'd finish 3rd in that one. So, yeah, I'm going to sell that one. Iden Benami with 4 super chats. My bad, Iden. 4 buy, sell, holds. First one, you don't mind all the linebackers rotating in frequently. No, I don't mind that at all. Like, look, the way that teams run offense nowadays, you have to be able to play situational football. You have to be able to have packages that match different things. Some teams are going to be in 12 one series, 10 the next. You have to be prepared to handle that. And you don't just handle that with the same personnel every time. If you've got the elite person, I mean, you could have personnel to do that, but most teams don't. And as good as Notre Dame's defense is, I don't think there's just one defensive personnel grouping that they can just put on the field and say, okay, we can handle everything as well as possibly needed with this personnel package. You've got to have different things you can do. The other thing too is when you have a lot of talented linebackers with varying skill sets, good coaches find ways to utilize them. So am I a fan of just constantly rotating every other series. Not really. I think you need to get into the flow of the game as a line. I think linebacker is a lot like, quarterback. It's a lot like wide receiver. It's a lot like corner where, yeah, you can rotate, but there needs to be some level of, I got to get into the flow of the game. And I can't do that if I'm constantly running in and out all the time. But as far as like packages and then also some rotations, yeah, I'm all for using a lot of those guys, because how do you justify not playing Jaden Alsbury? How do you justify not playing Kingston Viliama Asa? How do you justify not playing Jalen Sneed in some capacity? It's a tough one. You've got to take advantage of that. And then also the fact that you're playing 16 games this year, if you want to win a title, you need to make sure your guys are fresh throughout the year. So definitely a fan of that. So I'm buying that. Buy, sell, hold from Iden. Alabama will not miss a beat and continue being a championship contender this year and moving forward. I buy that. I mean, Iden, we did our college football playoff predictions the other day, and I had Alabama's winning the SEC. So certainly. Look, Kalen DeBoer is an elite coach. There's no doubt. He has won everywhere he's been, at Sioux Falls, at Fresno, even at Indiana as a coordinator. They did some really good things. And then, of course, at Washington. He'll win at Bama. Will they be will they be what they were under Nick Saban? No, they won't. But if he's there the next 10 years, if you tell me Kalen DeBoer is at Alabama for the next 10 years and he leaves on his own terms and there's no major scandals, will he have a national title under his belt? I'll say absolutely he'll have at least one. I don't know if he'll have more than that, because I think the game is changing now. And I don't think Nick Saban would have won. If Nick Saban was supplanted back to Alabama in 2024 and that began his career at the same age he was when he took over in 07, even with the current roster he's inheriting, I don't think he wins he won started in 07. He won a title in year 3, year 5, and year 6. So his first 6 years, he won 3 titles. I don't think that happens nowadays when you've got to play 3, sometimes 4 games to win a championship. So in 09, he would have only had to win 3 games. In 12, he only would have had to win 3 games. But in 2011, he'd have had to win 4 games because they didn't win the SEC that year. So that's tough. That's a lot tougher. So he's going to have a much tougher time, in my opinion, because of that. And it's just a different era. So will he win like Saban did? No, but nobody is, in my opinion. But he'll win one if he stays there at least that time. I mean, it may not even take him that long. I'm just saying, if I know he's going to be there 10 years and he's not going to get fired, then that means he won a title. And I think that he will. DK with a super chat. Notre Dame would be number 4 in the Pac-12 this year, playing Oregon State's schedule. I see what you did there, DK. I appreciate the super chat, man. If Notre Dame was in the Pac-12 this year, they would finish first. I can promise you that. I feel very good about that one. Very good about that one, my friend. Next one from Iden Benami. Keeping Riley Leonard healthy is the most important thing in 2024. I'm going to sell that because I think the offensive line coming together is the most important thing in 2024. If Riley Leonard is healthy, but the offensive line is a mess, they won't be as good as if the offensive line plays really well and they have to go with one of their backup quarterbacks for half the season. I think because of the talent they have at other positions, they're like, it's funny. I think Riley Leonard gives them the best chance to be successful as they've had at quarterback in 15, 20 years. I really believe that. But he's not going to be needed to be as dominant as some other guys were or carry the team as much as some other guys were because of what's around him on both sides of the ball. And I think that's going to be a factor. Like if Malik Zaire doesn't get hurt in 2015, he would have been a very dynamic quarterback and done all year what he did in the first 3 games. But there would have been games where they were going to have to put the team on his shoulders and will him to victory because of how bad the defense was. And I don't know that Riley's going to have to do that nearly as much as past quarterbacks have had to do. And so that factors in as well. You're going to be able to win a lot of games with your backup quarterback this year if your offensive line is really good. So I think, are they a championship caliber team? Probably not with that if that happens. But I also don't think you're a championship caliber team if your O-line is not very good and Riley Leonard's healthy. So I'm going to sell that. I like where your head's at, though, but I'm just going to sell that for that reason. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame does not false start our first 2 series at A&M. I'm going to buy that. I don't think they're going to false start twice. Does not fall. So I think what you're referring to is false starts each of the first 2 drives. I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Hayden 32, CJ Carr will lock up the second string quarterback by the A&M game. I'm going to sell that. Number 1, I think Gino Guidugli loves Steve Angeli. I'm just going to leave that there. Number 2, I don't know that I think by the time you get to game 1, they're going to look at CJ Carr as the future quarterback, him and Kenny as the future quarterback. I would assume, and based on some of the things I've been told, that the thought amongst some is that when we get to next spring, it's going to be a CJ versus Kenny battle more so than a Steve versus CJ versus Kenny battle. Now, Steve's going to battle, but I think that's where it's heading as long as things keep trajecting. But I also think there's a level of confidence that if they need someone to come off the bench early, it would be Steve because of the experience he has. And we'll kind of see how that plays out. But if they needed someone for a period of time, then I think you might see CJ be that guy. Hayden 32 also with Bison Hold, Texas A&M game, first offensive play, 11 personnel. Chris Mitchell, Jaden Greathouse, and Bo Collins will be the first team guys. If Jaden Thomas has any kind of banged up injuries between now and then, I'll buy that. If Jaden is healthy, I could see a scenario where Jaden Thomas is on the field. And because you're going to want to run the ball a little bit on Series 1, Jaden Thomas is your best blocking wide receiver. You may want him on the field to start things off. But if he gets banged up again, then I could see Bo. Look, if Jaden Thomas is not going to want to miss time in fall camp this year, like he has in the past, because you're going to get passed up by Bo Collins, and you're not going to get that job back. So I could see that. I'm going to hold for now because I want to see if Jaden Thomas is healthy all fall camp. But if Jaden was healthy, I would say probably sell that as far as the first offensive play. But Bo's going to play a ton, and I could see Bo getting targeted even more if that were the case. Could certainly see that. All right. Next one is from Hayden 32 as well. The longer Deuce Knight waits, the more it sets in that Notre Dame has been true from the start and care about Deuce the person, where other schools only care about Deuce the athlete. Oh, that's very true. I don't know that Deuce necessarily realizes that, nor do I think some people around him really care about that, which is sad. But look, the longer this goes on for Notre Dame where Deuce doesn't flip, the better it is for Notre Dame. If we get into September and he hasn't flipped, I'll feel a lot better about things. And I think if Notre Dame is if they're able to keep him in the class, and right now I'm not overly optimistic that they're going to keep him in the class, but if they do, it'll be because of this right here. Because Deuce finally, is able to convince people around him that is more important than some of the other things being offered to him from people. And so that's where it's at. I like that one, Hayden. All right. Let me pull this out of here real quick. It's doing that thing again where it's not letting me go to the next one, and I know that I'm not done yet. So I got to go here. All right, now we're back at it. Here we go. Bracketed cover 3. Aeneas Williams gets more snaps than Kedron Young in 2024. I want to hold that because there's still a lot of competition left. I could see that happening. I'm going to sell it just because right now I think Kedron Young's the more talented back, and I think as the season wears on, he'll kind of take over that role. But it would not shock me at all if Aeneas Williams gets more snaps than him. It wouldn't shock me at all because Aeneas can do so many things. Aeneas has so many niche potential roles that I could see him playing a lot more, even if Kedron is like the number 3 back as the pure runners. Aeneas may be your starting third down back or a goal line back. I could certainly see that. But right now, I think Kedron will end up doing more, but it won't shock me if I'm wrong. So I'm selling that, but it won't shock me at all if I'm wrong. Somebody asked me last night about Aeneas Williams, and I said, look, I think the kid could be a really good player. It just speaks volumes about how talented that room is, that it's not a given he'll be third, much less, second or first. It really is loaded. It really is loaded. Next one, Notre Dame from bracketed cover 3. Notre Dame has a top 5 to 10 coaching staff nationally. That includes head coach, coordinators, and position coaches. Absolutely, they do now. That's an easy one. Yes, buy the heck out of that. I think you've got arguably the best coordinator in tandem in college football. You could debate others, and I would be sympathetic to some of the arguments in that regard. There's certainly in the conversation there. You've got one of the best running back coaches in the business, one of the better receiver coaches in the business, arguably the best defensive backs coach in the business, a very good up-and-coming linebackers coach, a solid O-line coach, and a guy that from a pure coaching standpoint has proven to be pretty good so far at Notre Dame from a developing, from a putting good D lines on the field. We'll see about some other things that have to get figured out. But, I mean, look, Al Washington put out one of the 10 best D lines in college football last year. That's good. So, yeah, they're easily top 10. The question would be, okay, are they top 5? That's more debatable, right? But top 10, top 5 to 10, yes, they're in there. No doubt about it. Fields of Gold, buy, sell, hold. College football has more interesting storylines going into the 2024 season than any of the past 10 years. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because interesting doesn't always mean good. And there's a lot. So, yeah, I mean, you've got the portal stuff. You've got NIL. You've got some of the shadiness that goes on in recruiting, conference realignment, new TV deals. There's just so much going on. Expanded playoffs. There's a lot going into the season now that we didn't, that it's getting crazy. And then there's the on-field stuff that's fascinating as well. So, yeah, I'm going to buy that. Also, buy, so hold, regardless of what other teams do, Notre Dame should play all home and away games on campus. No, I mean, I don't agree with that. I'm going to sell that. All home games on campus, sure. But you can't control what other teams do. In order to have this rule, you'd have to get rid of the USC series because USC doesn't play on campus. And I don't think you want to do that. You'd have to get rid of the Navy game because, that's rare. I don't know the last time. It's been a long time since Notre Dame has played Navy in Annapolis. And I'm sure they have. I'm actually going to look that up and see when I'm pretty sure. I thought I remembered in the 90s or 80s at one point in time they played there. But give me a second to look that up. The last time they played in Annapolis was actually, no, that's not right. It says 2014, but that's not right. They didn't play in Annapolis in 2014. I was at that game. It does not say here when the last time. I kind of swore there was a game in the 80s or 90s they played at Navy's Field, but no. Looks like it was not. They played it where the Redskins played in 2014. So I don't know why it says Annapolis there, but anyway, I'm not a fan of demanding that for all games. I also think there are some cool aspects for your players, but also for fans to, play a team in Dallas at Jerry World or to, I've said before, like how cool would it be to, maybe have an Oklahoma Notre Dame game played at where Arrowhead or something like that. Or man, I'm okay with that occasionally. I don't like doing that all the time. I think there's nothing like a college football game on a college campus. And that's where Fields of Gold. I'm sympathetic to your position because, it's just a great environment. College games on college campuses, but there's also some advantage to at times playing neutral field games or playing in an NFL stadium or any of those cases. And as I mentioned before, USC's home field is not on campus. Well, okay, that's fine, but And the other thing too is you can't control that some away games are not on campus. If you got to play Miami as part of your ACC deal, you can't force them to play on campus because they don't have a stadium on campus. When you play Pitt, you can't force them to play on a campus because they don't have a stadium on campus anymore. So some teams it's just not an option, and you can't not play those teams, in my opinion. But yeah, home games I'm with. Like I'm fine with the 6-5-1 thing that they have, 6 home games, 5 road games, and then 1 neutral site game that's considered a home game for TV purposes, but it's not really a home game. I'm okay with that. I'm truly okay with that. Some of the places they do it I don't like, but I'm okay with it in theory. Nathan Milton, buy, sell, hold. First half of the season, the Al Golden defense pushes the scale for Notre Dame to win games. Second half of the season, the Mike Denbrock offense becomes a leading factor for Notre Dame winning games. I will buy that from the standpoint of that will be the perception and the talking point in the media. But I think once the offense gets rolling, they're going to get a lot of the love, but they're going to roll in part because of the defense. And that's twofold. Number one, the battle they've had to go against the defense. And then the second part of it is you look at it from the standpoint of, their level, the confidence that the offense has in the defense allows them to be more aggressive, knowing that mistakes will be able to be erased by your defense. So while the offense is throwing big balls down the field and doing read zones and running the ball and all this kind of stuff, it's partly because of how confident they are in the defense can bail them out if things don't go how you hope they go. So I'll buy that. I think that'll be the narrative. But I still think the defense is going to be at the heart of all their success this season. That's still my thought. Double bogey. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and Jaden Greathouse each have at least 750 yards from scrimmage and 7 touchdowns. Bye. Yeah, because I like what you said, yards from scrimmage. So I could see Jaden Greathouse not only having 7, around there yards-wise, but I could also see him having a couple reverses or something like that, a couple jet sweeps, a couple shovels, things like that. And then also, I think those two guys, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, go for over 750. I buy that. And then buy, sell, hold. Riley Mills has 5 or more sacks this season. I buy that as well, based on what I think he's going to do this season. Riker Ferg has 3 of them here. Number 1, Jim Harbaugh's decision to not be the honorary captain for Michigan's first game is an only PR move. Buy. The only reason he's not doing it is because of the bad publicity. Like if he was all locked in on the Chargers, why would he have agreed to it in the first place? Was he not aware he was going to be focused on the Chargers at that time? He rightfully so, caught a ton of flack for that. And just a lack of, inability to read the room from Michigan as a whole. This is ridiculous. If Jerry Jones had the stones to get the Cowboys more Super Bowl trophies and be the value of the team be more than $10.3 billion. I don't know enough about that submission to, I got to hold it because I don't know enough about it. I don't even know if their value is 10. I have no clue. Buy, so hold. Colorado will lose to North Dakota State by 3 points. I'm going to sell that. I would love to see that happen. I think Colorado's not going to be very good again this year, but I don't know that North Dakota State is the team that they used to be either. They're still very good. And they're still one of the best teams in college football. But I don't know that they're that dominant, can go beat all these Power 5 schools like maybe they've been in the past. Last year they got beat by 25 points by North Dakota. They got beat by 17 by South Dakota State. And then they lost to Montana in the semifinals. They're a very good team, but they're not that dominant team that they used to be. And so I think Colorado wins that game. And I'll tell you this, guys. Somebody just said in the chat, Colorado lose by 14. I'd be fine with that. I just don't think it's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong because I love upsets like that, but I don't think it will. Mr. Emil Wagner. Buy, so hold. Florida will become a bigger pipeline state for Notre Dame within the next 5 years than Ohio is now. Not so much in the number of recruits, but in the blue chip numbers. I agree with that completely. I think it's already happening. I mean, you look at Notre Dame's class right now, and or I shouldn't say where their class right now, but you look at where Notre Dame's recruiting is right now, and it's already there. I mean, Notre Dame's 2026 class only has 2 commits, and they're both from Florida. Right now, if you look at Notre Dame's 2025 class, they only have 1 kid from Ohio, and that's Gordy Solfstead. You look at Florida, and they've got Justin Thurman at running back. They've got Davion Dixon at defensive tackle, and they have Dallas Golden at corner. It's already a bigger pipeline right now for the next 2 years. You've got 5 kids committed from Florida in the 25 and 26 classes, only 1 kid from Ohio. So buy that, absolutely. Next one from Mr. Emil Wagner. If Boston College would have missed the game-winning field goal in 1993, we, Notre Dame, would have won another championship. Oh, there's no doubt about it. Because I believe Notre Dame still would have been in the Cotton Bowl. Somebody in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong on this, but I believe that they still would have been in the Cotton Bowl and still would have played Texas A&M and would have won that game, and they would have been ranked number 1. If there was, because I believe the way the bowl tie-ins were, Florida State was in the ACC, Colorado or Nebraska was in the Big 12 or Big 8, I think it was at the time. So I think they still would have played, and I think Notre Dame still would have played Texas A&M. So, and they would have won. So yes, absolutely. If David Gordon would have missed that field goal, Notre Dame would have won, because that was the last game of the regular season as well. So like it would have just been a bowl game. And if they would have played Nebraska in a bowl game, I think they would have beaten that Nebraska team. If they'd have played Florida State I've talked to Notre Dame players that played in that game, and they were like, we absolutely would have beat them in a rematch on a neutral field. Like they dominated them in the trenches. So yeah. Yep. Reese's Christ, buy, sell, hold. Given that the O-line performs consistently but mediocre all season, Denbrock will overcome it through scheme and play calls to guide Notre Dame to a championship level offense. I mean, I'm going to buy that to a degree. He's not. Look, Mike Denbrock isn't some football wizard that can go out there and take mediocre players and turn them into a championship level offense, even with a bad offensive line. He's going to do that because he's a smart football coach and because they're really talented at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. That's why they're going to be successful on top of. So it's partly right, but the talent is really good as well. So, yeah. DK with a super chat. I think DK has drank a few of those things he has in his avatar. Buy, sell, hold. I think he's referring to me. If I wasn't the owner of Irish Breakdown, I'd be a history teacher, but I'd be absent, just going through the pieces because I'd be too busy designing plays for a modern-day triple option. Okay, there's a lot wrong with that. Would I be a history teacher? Maybe. I mean, that's what I went to college for, is to be a history teacher. That was because that's what I needed to do to be. I love history, but I, planned on coaching football and potentially high school football. So I would have needed to be a teacher, and history was what I would have wanted to taught. I'd be absent. Nah, sell that, because that's not who I am. If I'm going to have a job, I'm going to work hard at it. And then, and I know you are, DK. I'm having some fun with it. I appreciate you, man. The last part, DK, I'm a little disappointed in you. And I know this is where you're coming from. So people that don't know DK, he's having some fun here. I hate the triple option offense. That I don't even want to joke about how I'd be talking about the triple option offense. The fact that you even called it a modern day triple option offense. There's no such thing as a modern triple option offense. The modern triple offensive option teams are trying to go away from the triple option. That's how much they know that you can't be a modern day triple option team. So no. Here's what I will say. Would I be that guy as a teacher? Let's pretend for a second I wasn't coaching. That during lunch breaks and other times, instead of being engaging with faculty, would be back there drawing up plays? Probably, because that's what I did in high school. And that's what I did in college when I was in classes. I had multiple teachers tell me I was wasting my time because you cannot make a career out of that type of stuff. And I am glad to report that I have proven them wrong. But in all seriousness, DK, I do very much appreciate the super chat, man. And he did say later, he said, just donating to the Rita Fund. I appreciate you very much for that, man. Truly, truly. Next, BISO hold from submission from John D. Irish. Tyler Buckner will throw a pass or run for a first down or touchdown from a fake field goal as holder for the kicker. Bye. I think they will utilize that at some point in time this season. Wade Garrett. Tyler Buckner, BISO hold. Tyler Buckner will throw. Actually, you know what? That's my fault, Wade, because I copied your name, got the thing submitted to bring up your second question, your submission, but did not actually paste your submission. So let me go down to the BISO hold in the show or on the message board and go find the questions. And I'm going to find your question here. So, Wade, your submission was, you're down here. Wade's was Notre Dame will have, BISO hold, Notre Dame will have the more talented roster than any team they play this year in the regular season. I'm going to buy that. Let's talk through this. Notre Dame versus Florida State. Because I don't think Texas A&M is in a discussion. I think it's either Florida State, Louisville, or USC. So Notre Dame versus those teams at quarterback, I'd rank Notre Dame number 1. Notre Dame against those teams at running back, I would rank Notre Dame number 1. Notre Dame versus those teams at wide receiver, if we're talking talent, I'd rank Notre Dame second. I'd probably rank USC number 1 if we're just talking pure talent, but that would be close. Louisville is also close with the transfers they got. So but I'd have Notre Dame ahead of Louisville on that one. Offensive line, just talent. Probably rank Notre Dame number 1 there. Number 2, so D-line against those teams, I'd probably rank Notre Dame number 2. I think Florida State has the most talent on the defensive line. I think you could argue maybe Notre Dame has more depth, but I think the talent at the top for Florida State is better. I think Notre Dame has a better D-line than USC and Louisville. Linebacker, probably rank Notre Dame 1. And secondary, I'd rank Notre Dame 1. So yes. Yep. I'll buy that. Sorry about not getting that submission in the part where people can see it, Wade. It's my bad. Burnout 85. The late shuffling of the offensive line during camp means. So I think what he hears, I got to buy, sell, or hold each of these 3. So I'm going to do it that way. Nothing, just working 1s in with 2s. B, no one has clearly taken the starter role. C, we're seeing a true battle as the young guys are ascending. So I'm going to buy C. And I'm going to sell A because it doesn't mean nothing. I mean, you're not going to just do that just for no reason at all. You are kind of doing that, but it's not the primary reason. And so, yeah, I'm going to buy C, sell A, hold on B because if I have to do that. Somebody in the chat says that I'm underestimating Texas A&M's talent. No, I'm not underestimating Texas A&M's talent at all. I think Texas A&M is a very talented team. But Texas A&M lost a ton these last 2 off seasons from their roster. There are some holes on the roster that Mike Elko is going to have to fix. And while I think A&M is going to have a good football team this year, they have a tough schedule. They're learning a new system. And I do not believe that Texas A&M is going to be a team that is so supremely loaded talent. They're going to have better players top to bottom than Florida State or even Louisville or USC. They're not there yet. They could get there soon. But A&M fans are going to have to accept the idea that there's some parts of your roster that are not up to where they need to be. And there's some other parts that are good, but not great. And there's some parts that are great. That D-line is one of the most talented defensive lines of college football. Other spots, O-line, you're not in that conversation. Quarterback, I love the starter. Backup kid's okay. Not a lot after that, in my opinion. Wide receiver, it's good. It's not great. Running back, it's good. It's not great. Some talented kids there. Linebacker, it's good. It's not great. Secondary, it's good. It's not great. Some of these other teams just have better play. Like Louisville's got over half their defense probably starts at Texas A&M, in my opinion. So I respect Texas A&M a lot. I think maybe there's some underestimating of some of the teams that I brought up on your part, but I think Texas A&M has a very talented roster. It's just I know that theirs isn't more talented than Notre Dame. Doesn't mean they're going to beat that Notre Dame's going to beat them, because the team with the better roster doesn't always win. Notre Dame had a better roster than Clemson last year, got beat by 8. Notre Dame had a better roster than Louisville last year, got beat by 18. Stuff happens. Having the better roster doesn't mean you're always the better team or that you're going to win every game. Some teams are just better than you that day. But I have a great deal of respect for Texas A&M and their roster. It's just not as good as Notre Dame's, and I don't think it's as good as Louisville's, and I don't think it's as good as Florida State's or USC's overall. That's my takeaway. I think it will be in the next 3-4 years. I think Mike Elko is going to do a heck of a job there. We are Notre Dame. Tommy Rees will be an offensive coordinator next year somewhere. That's 2025. I'm going to sell that because I hope that I'm selling that. I think Tommy Rees needs to be somewhere where he can be a mentee and learn. And he's been moved around. If he got an OC job, it'd be his 3rd job in 3 years. I think there's a lot he can learn from Kevin Stefanski and that offensive staff, that a couple years there would benefit him. But would it shock me if he's an OC somewhere next year? No, it wouldn't. But I hope he's not, because I would like to see him just kind of get stable for a couple years, learn the NFL game more directly, learn some lessons. Because sometimes you can't really learn lessons until you get into year 2 and year 3, because there's lessons you learn about the evolution of your football team that you need to learn, and you can't learn when you go from job to job to job. And that's something that I experienced firsthand. Is there's just things that you don't get to experience when you are moving around a lot. So I hope that he stays. Also from We Are Notre Dame, by so hold, Louisville will have more wins and finish higher in the ACC than SMU. Absolutely buy that. And then by so hold, one of Notre Dame coaches will win a national award this season. I'll buy that. I mean, I've got Notre Dame going deep into the playoffs, so I could certainly see that. Whether it's Marcus Freeman or one of the coordinators, I could see that. I don't know that I'd predict that today, but I could certainly see it. Got a super sticker from Walk On Carry Off. Thank you very, very much for that. I appreciate that. Got one from D Troll Hunter. Brian, admit it that you use triple option all the time in NCAA 25. I will not admit that because I'm not a liar, and I do not use a triple option. I will say, however, that I run the heck out of speed option in NCAA 25. I haven't played it in a couple weeks, but actually, it's been over about a week. I haven't played in about a week, but I will run the heck out of some speed option now. But I do it out of 10 or 11 personnel. So, no, I do not run the triple option. Do not spread those blasphemies against me, my friend. You know better than that. Triple option. Come on now. All right, let's get to the next submission. We have from Z-Man. This is actually the last one, and I want to thank you all for being with me today. I needed this. This was good. This is really good. From Z-Man 381, if Deuce Knight doesn't end up signing with the Notre Dame 2025 class, Kenny Minchey will be the 2027 starting quarterback as a 5th-year senior. Okay, I like where your head's at on this, and I'm going to buy this because I want to end this show with optimism, and I would love for Kenny Minchey to stay at Notre Dame. So what you're saying here is CJ Carr takes over in 25. He's the starter in 25 and 26. CJ then goes to the NFL, and then Kenny takes over in 2027 as a 5th-year senior. I would love that. That would make me very happy. I don't think that that's going to happen, but I'm going to buy it because I would love it to happen. That would be great. I would absolutely love that to happen. But not sure that I think that it will. So that's going to be it, folks. I really appreciate y'all very much for being with me tonight. I had fun, and I needed that. Definitely needed that. Hit that like button on your way out of here, folks. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. I'd greatly appreciate that. If you have not done so, sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I know we're way behind. My guys have written a lot of articles that I've got to edit and publish, and we'll get those out. And I promise I'm going to get back to being on the boards and stuff. But I appreciate y'all's patience for not being able to do shows the last couple of days and not getting articles out, and the amount of people, the amount of you that have reached out and said, hey, don't worry about that stuff. Take care of your family and your dog and all that. Man, it means the world to me. I want to thank y'all again for that. You have no idea how much that has meant to me, and just reminded me of just what a great community we have here. It truly, from the bottom of my heart, I thank y'all so much. Like I said, I'm not a very sentimental guy. It may come across cold. I don't know how it's being perceived, but it's true. Man, I'm telling y'all very much. Like, I've been touched. My wife's been touched. We are so appreciative of the love that we've got from y'all, and just know that it's absolutely reciprocated. I love the community that we have. And my wife, who just dropped Rita off, she's now going through the transfusion now. She also thanks for your prayers, IB Nation. So we appreciate y'all. We appreciate y'all very much. DK said Angela just showed up and classed this place up. You are right about that, my friend. You are way righter about that than you were the triple option. There's no doubt about that. But I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. We'll talk to y'all again very, very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.